Alright, welcome to the channel. My name is James and today I'm going to give you an in-depth introduction to OSL. We're going to cover the do's, the don'ts and everything in between so you know exactly how to apply this technique to your models. Let's get into it.
Alright, in this video I'm going to explain how I painted the fire effect and the OSL effect on this Drukhari Mandrake. You're going to need 3 paints for it. You're going to need some Riff green, some Slimer green and some whites. The paints will be listed below in the description along with the Games Workshop equivalents. This video is going to be split up into 2 parts. First we're going to cover off the theory and then second we're going to cover off the application.
So it's important that we define what an object source light is. It has to be something that is within the scene. Either it's part of the base, part of the backdrop if a model has one, or it exists on the model. Now if it is outside of the scene, it is just classed as a secondary light source. So for example, if I have this light right now, because it's not in the scene, you can't see it in the frame, it is a secondary light. If I pick it up and have it here, it is now object source lighting. And that's pretty much as simple as it is. Alright, so now we're going to talk about different types of lighting. So there's going to be a couple of diagrams that come up to hopefully help explain this, but we have directional light, which basically just heads in one direction, and then we have omnidirectional light, which basically just emits light in a big orb around the object. Now in both cases, the center of the light, or where the light is coming from, will be the brightest point and also where the color is most vibrant. As you get further and further away from the source of the light, it'll have less effect on the surrounding area. Before you start adding any additional light sources or any colored lights to your scene, it's important that you've painted all of the other components. This is because the colored light will interact differently with each of the surfaces and you'll have a different colored light reflected back. So as you can see in this diagram, we have a red bar, a yellow bar and a blue bar, and they all reflect the green light slightly differently. Whenever you're adding an additional light source or some OSL to your scene, you need to consider whether certain parts of your models or certain objects within your scene prevent the light from reaching other surfaces. So as you can see in this diagram, we have the black box that's affecting the light reaching the white box. It could be that that section is still being illuminated by the primary light source or some ambient light, or it remains as an area of ambient occlusion, or basically just in shadow. Now these are all considerations that you have to make whenever you're placing your light within your scene, whenever you're deciding on the color of your light, or whenever you're deciding on how much light it's actually shedding on the scene. Now we're going to have a look at the Mandrake and how I plan out the OSL elements within this model.
It can be beneficial to mock out your OSL in an editing tool like Photoshop so you can get an idea of how the light is going to interact with the different surfaces and different parts of your model. For this we're going to be using an omnidirectional light, and it's mostly going to be emitting from the palm of the hand and where the flames are the brightest. So I've just quickly drawn in a few areas where I think the light's going to interact with. Doing the same from the side, again omnidirectional light, you can see the different areas of the midsection and the hair that the light interacts with and how far back it goes on the model. Again, just drawing in those sections you get a rough idea of how the OSL affects the model. Alright, let's get into the painting now. We're going to start off with a base layer of Riff green in all areas where we're going to be building up these light sources and building up these bright green colours. So just apply 1 or 2 coats to ensure you have a nice solid foundation that we can start building upon in the later stages. Now I'm going to be flipping between an Artis Opus Series S size 0 and a 00 for most of this model. Then I'm going to follow up with some pure Slimer green into the areas that are going to be the brightest parts of our lights. Now just take your time whenever you're doing the insets or the scars, because you want to make sure there's clean separation between those and the rest of the skin. Whenever it comes to the flames, we're going to make sure that the center of the flames, or around the palm, is going to be the brightest area. So we're going to be bringing all of that color and all of that pigment up towards that area. Now I will take a couple of passes to build up a nice opaque and saturated color here. So just take your time with it. Don't apply your paint super thick. Patience is key whenever you're doing things like this. So you'll see I'll start to use some semi-transparent layers to try and create some gradients and transitions between the Riff green and the Slimer green. Now we're going to come back in with some of that darker green just to smooth out those transitions and create nice smooth gradients between the 2 colours. But right now we're just blocking a lot of this information in and really establishing where the brightest points on the model are going to be. So now coming back in with that Riff green, that darker green, we're just going to smooth out those transitions out towards the tips of the flames. Remember, the flames are always going to be brightest at the center and then darkest towards the edge, or towards the tips of the flames. So just thin down your layers a wee bit here, ensure that they're semi-transparent, kind of almost heading towards that glaze consistency, just to help create those smooth transitions in the flames. Now to get some real pop and punch into those colours, we're just going to add some straight white into the Slimer green, creating something of like a 50-50 mix, and we're just going to start to drop in some highlights within the scarification and again towards the brightest area of the flames. So again, we're just dragging all of that pigment up towards the palm and where the flames originate. Again, you want to be working with those semi-transparent layers here so you can create smooth gradients and smooth transitions through the flames. If you end up with any visible steps or layer lines between these colours, just come in with the previous colour and glaze over the top of it. Now whenever you're trying to create OSL or glow effects, it's important that you use really saturated colours. That's because they can really handle the introduction of white and still stay quite punchy and quite vibrant. If you use desaturated colours and add in some white, it'll go quite grey, go quite muted, and it'll not really have that intensity and vibrancy that you need for this effect. So continue to add more white to your mix to increase the value of the colour. So again, we're getting really bright here because we want the initial glow or the light to appear super bright within the scene, and then that justifies the glow effect taking up so much space. And again, I'm pulling all of this pigment up towards where the flames originate, so all towards the center of the hand or where the flames originate in the arm. Those are going to be the brightest points on the model and within the scene. And that's pretty much it whenever it comes to painting the flames and the scarification. It's really just about creating that intensity and that vibrancy and value within the colors and within the objects that are going to be emitting the light. So now it's time to add some green glow to the other elements of the model. So we're going to start off with a 50-50 mix of Riff green and Slimer green. And this has been thinned down to pretty much a glaze consistency. So we're using a glaze consistency because we want those underlying colours that we've built up across the skin, the hair, the robes and the other elements of the model to show through whenever we apply the green on top. So you have to remember that the colour that you see is going to be the colour of the object plus the addition of the green light. If you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and helps promote the videos. Also, don't forget to give that subscribe a wee slap and a tickle. So whenever you're doing this stage, be patient. Do use semi-transparent layers, do use glazes to map out the initial impression of the lighting. Remember that the light is going to emanate as an orb from the center of the flames out, and it's going to diminish as it gets further and further away from the origin. So it'll have less impact on the other colors as you get further away from the origin. Now it's worth noting that areas that aren't really affected by the primary light source, like the abs and areas that are in shadow, will present more of that green tone than areas that are being affected by the primary light and the green light. And that's because they're only being affected by the OSL. But again, just take your time with this stage. Remember, you can always add to it, but it's more difficult to take away. So build it up slowly. So adding a bit more Slimer green into the mix, we're going to use transparent layers here. So they're just a wee bit thicker than a glaze consistency. And we're going to use these to start building up the intensity of the light. So you can see I'm starting to focus on areas that are closer to where the light originates from and starting to pick out some details and reflection patterns in those areas. Now a lot of the surfaces that I'm working with here are either textured or would create a diffuse reflection pattern. If you're working on shiny surfaces, the reflection pattern will differ, so it's important to take note of that and think about how different surfaces and different materials reflect light. As I move the model around here, you can start to see how the OSL is shaping up and how it's affecting certain parts of the miniature. You can also see how those underlying colours are really affecting the tone of the green as well. And now we're just going to repeat this process with pure Slimer green. Remember that the area that the Slimer green is going to affect is going to be smaller again. It's going to be closer to where the light originates, and that's where more of that green colour is going to present. Now obviously around the forearm and the fingers are going to be super bright by the end of this, so really build up the colour in those areas. And whenever we start working on the midsection of the model or the abs and the hair, we're really just focusing on getting closer and closer to where the light originates. And remember, we're always thinking about this as an omnidirectional light, so that's just a big orb that emits from where the light is brightest. I'm also using the Slimer green to start imparting some shape and structure within certain elements of the model and pick out some details like the musculature of the abs and the individual strands of the hair. So you can really see how some of the details are becoming more prominent because of the green light, and it's really starting to shape the scene with the fire emitting its own light. And just like how we finished off the flames, we're going to add some white into our Slimer green. We're going to apply this to the areas that are closest to the flames. while ensuring that our mix is not the same value or intensity as the brightest part of the flames. Now remember, our glow effect will not be as bright or as high in intensity or value as the object emitting the light. That's a really important point, and one that can really throw the effect off if you get it wrong. But you can really see here how the areas that are closest to the flame are the brightest versus the areas that are further away. OSL can seem super daunting at first because you have to paint over your pretty much already finished miniature. But whenever you break it down to its core components, it's quite easy to understand what steps you need to follow. OSL can really elevate your models and create an entirely different environment and scene for them to exist in. Feel free to experiment with the different color options available to you, but remember, you just need a dark color, super vibrant mid-tone, and then some white. Hopefully this has given you enough information and enough confidence to go out and start testing this out on your own models, and I can't wait to see how you apply OSL to your models and to your scenes.
Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for future videos, please drop them below in the comments. And if you want to show me what you've been working on, head on over to the Discord and drop some pics into the whips or the completed projects. I'd love to see what you've been painting. If you'd like to get some personalised coaching and tuition, head on over to the Patreon and check out the available packages. There'll be something there to suit everybody. All links can be found below in the description. Thank you again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you at the next one.